Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Hicks. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach for Maine Woodland Owners. We are a statewide organization that provides resources and expertise to woodland owners in Maine, mostly and primarily small woodland owners, those who own about 1,000 acres or less. But we work with lots of different landowners, and we have been around since 1975. So we certainly have a lot of experience and a lot of really great membership over the past 45 years to make us who we are today. This program is Legislative Update with Tom Doak. As everybody knows, it's December, and January is the beginning of the continuation of the 130th legislative session in Maine. And Maine Woodland Owners, one of our primary services, or not primary, but one of the more important services that we offer landowners is a voice in the legislature and also representation in agency decision making. So this session is going to be busy, and we have been keeping, or not we, Tom Doak, our executive director, has been keeping track of bills. Even during the recess, he's been involved in committee work during this recess, so he's not had any time off from legislative activity. So today, he's going to update this group on what he's been doing, how things have been going on important issues that impact woodland owners, and what we should be expecting in January when the legislature comes back into session. We also, I just want to do a quick introduction. We have here Carla Black, who is a very brand new, spanking new staff person here at Maine Woodland Owners. She's our deputy executive director, deputy director here, and she's also going to be keeping track of legislative issues and probably taking over more of that as time goes on. So Carla, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Always check our website. I try to keep that up to date. I'm also the editor of the newsletter, so I'm always interested in hearing from members and receiving any possible ideas and submissions for the newsletter. And I also pass on any information, questions that members have from these programs and from articles and website posts that we put on our website. So please feel free to reach out to me on email or in the office. At this point, I'm going to pass over to Tom, the mic, and I'm going to, I do want to say one thing. If you do want to, we are going to have time for questions. We're going to have time for clarifications. You certainly can use the chat function. I'll be keeping track of that and letting Tom know if there are any questions posted on chat. And also, if you don't want to do that, you just want to get our attention, you turn your video on and you can raise your hand, or we will have a Q&A at the end, and you can take your mic off, you can take your mute button off, and you can jump in and just ask your questions. So we'll have lots of ways for you to participate in this discussion. Okay, so I'm going to turn my mic off and I'm going to pass it on to Tom.
Great, thanks, Jen. I've got, welcome everybody. I see a lot of familiar names on the list of folks, so great. I've got about 6 different topics I want to talk about, and it may be, I'll try to give people a chance before I move to the next one to see if there's any question that I need to respond to while I'm on that topic. So I'll be thinking about if you have something you want to talk about, as Jen says, raise your hand and put it in the chat, and we'll try to address it then. And then if you thought of something, and when we're all done, you're welcome to bring up the topic again. So feel free to let me know any questions you have. I want to start with one that I think is a positive. So Jen mentioned I've been working through the summer and fall here on legislative matters, and there were a lot of bills held over from the last legislative session, so which is not untypical. This is the long session of the legislature, the first year of a 2-year legislative session. Often some of the more challenging bills are discussed, but then held over to the second session for resolution. And so that's what's happened on some of the issues that we're dealing with. And over the summer, there were meetings about either legislative committees or legislative directed groups that met to discuss some of these issues. So it's been a kind of a busier than actual normal summer and fall on legislative matters. So the legislature comes back on January 6th, 5th, back into session, and expect them to be in session through probably sometime in April. One of the challenges on the legislative side is last year it was all done, essentially all the committee work and was done on Zoom, and then when they actually got together and voted in the chambers, they didn't let anybody else in. So it's an odd situation, and it's almost difficult. It's very difficult sometimes to influence the legislature, or to just provide basic information in a Zoom setting. One of the people that work on the legislature a lot realize that most of the work occurs outside the committees and outside of those kind of hearings, in the hallways, and also if you're sitting in a hearing room and something's said, the legislature will look over at you and you can give an eye roll or something, and they can judge what you're thinking, but you look straight ahead at Zoom, so it's a very different format. And what I understand is probably at least the first month, at least for the month of January, they're likely to be in Zoom format for the legislature. So it kind of presents a unique situation. So the first bill I want to talk about is a bill called the Right to Practice Forestry. It's a holdover bill from last year. It's a bill that was aimed at doing a couple of things. One is to create, to create a system where forestry is recognized as responsible forestry should be allowed and not prevented in local communities, and also possibly deal with issues of harassment by individuals who don't like timber harvesting, who might be harassing a landowner or logger. That bill was held over, and a group has been meeting over the summer. And the way it's turning out, I think, is this. There is a existing, there's no right to practice forestry in Maine that says if you do certain things, it's an automatic right. But there's a long-standing legislation that says if that if a municipality wants to regulate forestry in their community, there's a process they have to follow to create an ordinance regulating forestry. And it talks about things like it must be developed in consultation with a licensed forester. It must use definitions that are the same as the state uses. It must be reviewed by the Maine Forest Service. The Maine Forest Service has the right. There must be a public hearing on the ordinance at which the Maine Forest Service has the right to participate and talk about their concerns or anything they want to say about the ordinance. And then it must be submitted back to the Forest Service to make a final copy if an ordinance is adopted. Those are all part of the existing law requirements. But what we have found out is that there are many ordinances in place already that have never gone through that process. I think the Forest Service may have 8 or 10 towns that might have consulted with them, but there's probably three times that many that have a forestry ordinance who have adopted an ordinance without following the legal process, which creates some problems because some of these ordinances are very poorly written, to be honest with you. And the idea of having the Forest Service involved is to make sure they're written properly. And most ordinances many of the ordinances have come forward because of a single incident. But I have dealt with a number of these in the past, and a lot of the ones that are proposed don't make any sense from forestry, from a forestry point of view. There are some at least one town that uses the same standards for clearing for development as they do for all forest management in the town, for example. And that there's no way you can manage forest, do forest management on a woodlot based on clearing for development standards. So many of them are ill-conceived. So I believe where this is going to go, and again, will be a report back to the committee, and the committee of jurisdiction will have to decide whether they want to proceed with this. But I believe what's going to happen is the towns are going to be told that if you have an ordinance that has not gone through review, you have X amount of time to complete that, to go through that review as required by law. And if you do not, by the date certain, those ordinances will automatically be voided by the state. And then it would create the second part of it. It would create a registry in the Maine Forest Service, so that if any ordinance that is in effect, a local ordinance in fact dealing with forest management, would be in a registry held by the Maine Forest Service. So you could look at their online website to say if there's an ordinance in place in the town where you own land, and if it's not on that list, it is not an official ordinance, and thus not a valid ordinance. I think that's where that'll be the recommendation of this group, and I think that's where it will go. So at least those that have been developed that are not have not gone through a kind of a rigorous review before being adopted will either have to go through it or be eliminated. So I think that's a positive, frankly. I think that's as far as the legislation will go, but I think that's a good positive step, frankly. And the experience has been when the Forest Service is involved and actually talks about the science behind these ordinances, some of these ill-conceived ones just kind of end up disappearing because the people realize these don't make sense. So that's the first one. Is there anything anybody wants to ask about that one? Hope we haven't bored you all on that. There's more exciting stuff coming. So, okay, Jen, you let me know if you see something in the chat or anything.
I will. And do you want me to throw a link up where for this, where they can get more information
On that issue?
Yeah.
If you have it, yeah.
Okay.
So the second one I want to talk about is an interesting one, is the issue of hounding and landowners, hunting with hounds and landowners. And this may seem like an odd one, but this is kind of an interesting one actually. So as you may know, there's a leash law in Maine that says you have to have your dog under control or on a leash, except for hunting, which makes sense, hunting dogs. There has been a growing number of complaints about people hunting with dogs, and they're primarily hunting with hounds. So these are not bird hunting dogs that the issue, but they're hounds that are hunting largely coyotes and bears, and actually running through properties where landowners don't want them, and repeatedly going through properties where landowners don't want them. There's no such thing as trespass of a dog. There's a trespass by a human. If you don't want somebody on your land, you can say so or post it or whatever. A human being cannot then not go on the property, but the dog can. The dog actually, there's no prohibition. And what has been happening in too many situations, that people that are running dogs are purposely knowingly and willingly and purposely letting these dogs go where landowners have told them they don't want them to be, and even onto posted land directly. And there's nothing in the law that prohibits that, which is kind of strange. So they have a number of issues of where they have where the person has basically said, I'm going to let these go on your land. I know you don't want them on there, but I can do this. There's no crime, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be back tomorrow, and we'll do the same thing. It's a small number of folks that are doing it, but it's causing quite a few problems, frankly. So there was a group that put together to look at this issue, and I think where this is going to go is something that says if you're hounding and now using hounds for coyotes and bears essentially, and your dogs are found on a property that the landlord does not want you to, and you be there, and you have been told by a law enforcement officer that that they do not want you there, that is your one warning for the next year. And if you come back and that dogs are back on that property within 1 year, then you are penalized. You will be fined for that. If you are convicted, if it goes to court, then it could theoretically go to court. if you're convicted by more, I think it's going to be either 2 or 3 times of doing this over the years, you will have an automatic revocation of your license, of a license. One of the issues that's being discussed is whether to have a hounding license or not. I think there likely to be a new license, which would be a hounding license, and that could then be revoked. So this is something that's coming partly from the hounding community and partly from the landowners, because the hounding folks that are doing this, that are responsible, don't want the people that are causing the problems around. So they're saying, okay, see if we can address these issues. So that's kind of an interesting one I never thought I'd get involved in, but that's likely to happen. And it's kind of in recognition that the landowner, shouldn't have to put up with activity they really don't want on their land. And it's up to the person who wants to use their land to act in an appropriate manner. So I think that will likely go out that way. The only debate will be whether or not a special hounding license is in play, or would it be your hunting license that you potentially could lose if you don't behave in your hounding. So any questions on that one? All right, this one may take a little more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tom, I don't know if I'm muted or not, but
I can hear you, Rich.
Can a hound go on property and the hunter have to stay off?
Yes. If your land is posted, or you've told the person, you can prohibit access to your land in a number of ways. You can post it. You can tell the person they can't go on. There's a number of ways. There's purple paint. Right. There's all that. So any human that goes on after with that, knowing that they're not allowed, that is in fact a trespass. But any dog right now, there is no such thing as dog trespass. And one of the issues is the people that are expressly letting know right in front of a no trespassing sign, turning their dogs loose right in front of the landowner. I mean, there are instances where they've let them go right in front of the landowner after the landowner says, "Do not let your dog go on my property." They let them go.
But aren't there laws in the state of Maine that say dogs can't run wild on property, chasing game?
Well, they can chase game they're allowed to chase. So they can't chase deer, but they can. These hounds are trained on largely on coyotes or bears.
Okay.
So they're not chasing deer. They're not chasing. They're specific to a particular animal.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. The big one will clearly be Sunday hunting. There was a proposal. There were 4 Sunday hunting bills proposed in the last legislative session. The one that got the most attention was one that said you can hunt on Sunday on your own land or with written permission. So you as a landowner could hunt automatically on Sunday, and you could give permission to anybody you wanted to, and it would be written permission. That was the proposal that came up. This is coming from outside of the state. This is coming from national organizations. It's not being pushed within the state or by state organizations in the state. It's pushed by largely 3 out-of-state hunting and organizations. I can name them if you'd like. I mean, one of them is the NRA. One is the I think it's the Sportsman's Congressional something Foundation. And then there's a backcountry hunters and anglers. Those are all national groups who believe that landowners, hunters in Maine are disadvantaged and they should have these rights. It was a pretty raucous hearing, to be honest with you. All the landowners groups that oppose, so we testified enough, again, from our organization, we've supporting hunting, we supported the expansion of hunting. There's been an incredible expansion of hunting opportunities in the last decade in Maine. I mean, bow hunting, muzzleloader, extended seasons, moose hunt in southern Maine, coyote hunting at night. I mean, the interesting about coyote hunting is you have to get a permit to hunt at night for coyotes, but you get it from the state. You don't get it from the landowner, you get it from the state. And the landowner is never involved. doesn't have to be involved. But all the landowners that testified against the bill, all the landowners were challenged that whether we actually represented whether we really could represent our organizations or not. These bills have failed 26 times in the last 32 years. And, but that wasn't good enough. We were said, well, you really don't know what your members think then, because you don't have show us a direct poll of your members. And I said 26 times in the last 30 years. And so it was kind of a weird situation. We were challenged by landowners were challenged to say, the landowner groups were challenged, well, how do you know you represent, can you really represent your membership? And I said, well, I didn't think I could, I wouldn't be saying this, but so it's interesting. It was interesting because we've never had a bill. The one thing that the hunting community, again, we own 76 parcels of land. They're all open to the public except for one for hunting, and that's because there's a deed restriction placed on it in a bequest. So we're fine with hunting. We support hunting. We encourage hunting. Everybody that calls us and asks permission, we say yes, of course you can go. You don't need to ask our permission, and all those things. And I'm a lifelong hunter myself, but this issue, the hunting committee has never wanted the idea of having to get permission. So it was kind of an interesting bill because the one thing, this is unwritten agreement over the last many years is that you don't have to get permission to hunt on somebody's land, but on Sunday you can't go. And that's kind of, in most states in this country, you must have permission of the landowner and you pay. Many states you pay. Here you don't have to get permission, 6 days out of 7, and the 7th day you can't go. And that's been the kind of the compromise, so that landowners have not pushed to get permission requirements. The hunting folks have said, okay, well, with 6 days would be right. It's a balance. So this was the first time there'd been a major push on the hunting side to say, well, let's get permission requirements. Those came from national groups. The local groups, hunting groups, did not want anything to do with it because they know the argument was you'd have to get from the outside groups was you'd have to get written permission on Sunday from the landowners. But the other 6 days of the week, you'd have the right to go unless the landowner posted their land. And I'm saying this is crazy that you're going to have 2 sets of systems. I have to post my land 6 days a week, and the 7th day you have to have permission. This isn't going to last. So that and there was a lot of opposition. The Department Inland Fisheries opposed it, but the legislature directed the department to do a survey of Maine residents, Maine hunters, and Maine landowners to determine what the feelings are of those groups regarding Sunday hunting. The only poll that I'm aware of was a poll that was done in 2005, and it asked the general public, are you in favor of Sunday hunting? And the numbers were 78% opposed, maybe 20 in favor, and the rest undecided. So it was overwhelmingly opposed. So there is going to be a survey developed, and we had a subgroup look at it, develop questions, that hired an outside consulting firm, develop the questions. So there is a survey that will go out in the next couple of weeks to about 2,000 Mainers, and to ask a bunch of questions. Do you support Sunday hunting or not? If you're a landowner, do you currently regulate access? Would you be more likely to regulate access to Sunday hunting? Those kind of things. It's a pretty extensive survey. So that will go back to the legislature, and then there'll be kind of a free-for-all frankly, on Sunday hunting. I can tell you this is the most serious threat we've seen on the Sunday hunting in more than 15 years ago. The other big push was it was in the governor's budget at the time, a $3 increase in hunting licenses, and to go with that, you could hunt on Sunday. And that was the hearing on that was the most raucous legislative hearing I've ever been in. It went on for hours and hours, and the room was full of people, 90% of them opposed. And it was was an amazing hearing, because you had NRA members and Lifetime Sportsman's Alliance and Maine Hunter people getting up opposing it, and it was pretty raucous. So I don't know what will happen on this, but there is a very serious push. There's money behind it, there is a serious attempt on this one. So this was, if you care about this issue, you'll want to engage, because it is not to be taken lightly. In the past few years, kind of had an agreement. The bills would come up. There'd be an agreement between the landowners and the people that kind of wanted Sunday hunting, but they knew it wasn't going to happen, or they didn't want to mess up the system. We'd all get up and say our piece, and the bills would just be killed off one after another. And there was no big fight, no big push between landowners and hunters. And it was just they died quiet deaths as they went along. But this will not go that way. This will be a full court press to try to push Sunday hunting in Maine. So happy to take questions. I'm assuming there's some questions or some thoughts or feedback or, on this issue. But this will be interesting. And I have a list of all the proposals that have been tried in the past. It's amazing the number of, the concept is this: try to get something passed and then, and then build up. That's what has always been the plan, is let's just get something passed. It could be squirrel hunting from noon to 2 in the afternoon on Sunday. If anything would be helpful as far as and then build on it. That's the intention. So I don't know exactly what a final proposal might come from the people who are pushing this, but it will be a major fight in this legislative session coming up.
Has there been a thought about doing a survey among the emails of Maine woodland owners?
Yeah, I've been thinking about taking the actual questions, the questionnaire that's available, that is going to be used, and sending out to at least the landowner part of it to our members to get a sense. Yeah.
There's a question from
Sure.
Gordon Mott.
Yep.
Will there be any opposing bill regarding Sunday hunting to require permissions about some things like night hiking, for example?
Well, here's what I think will happen, to be honest with you, and I think this is unfortunate, because I'm a lifelong hunter, and I appreciate the fact that I've had the ability to access people's land and without having to always get permission, and and I think we've kind of respected that. If you implement Sunday hunting, there is no logical reason why you would have. I'm not sure why you could justify allowing someone not having a bill. Not having legislation, not having a statute that says you have to get permission to hunt on somebody's land. It's the norm across this country. The only reason that hasn't been pushed is because of the Sunday hunting balance. I would say the immediate response would be multiple bills that say you have to have permission to go on someone's land and hunt on Sunday, 7 days a week, period. And that will be the end of the compromise. And it's pretty hard to come up with arguments about why the burden is on the landowner to keep someone off the land that they don't, an activity you don't want on your land, that you're responsible for telling the person they can't be there, as opposed to them having to get permission. That's exactly where it will go. It may pass the first time it comes up, it may pass the second, but that takes away the arguments about why that you don't have to get permission to go on someone's land or not. So Gordon, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it will be much more than just night hunting for coyotes. I think it will be the whole thing. 7 days a week, you got to get permission, period.
And then Kirby Ellis asked, would this go to a public vote? So I guess referendum is what he's saying.
It won't go to a public vote. Well, it won't. It will go to the legislature. I mean, the folks that are pushing this have said that if this doesn't pass, they want to go to a public referendum, which I think is many folks have said, okay, try that, see what happens, because it's highly unlikely to pass in a public referendum. You could see it as a referendum, but it won't start there, or it isn't set up to go there right now. I'd like to hear from people's thoughts about what they think. I know I've been in this job 17 years, and I know there are members that support Sunday hunting. I know that the vast majority of our members oppose it. And just from the feedback I've gotten. It actually was the last time this came up, it was the biggest increase in membership we've ever had when we opposed it. So.
Tracy, did you want to jump in?
Tracy,
I was just gonna say, I like it the way it is, so keep doing what you're doing.
I mean, I know there are other points of view, and I don't pretend that this is 100%, but this is the one issue that, if I had to pick one issue that I am more confident than any other, as far as the vast majority of our members feel about this is the one about, again, not opposed to hunting, opposed to hunting on Sunday. And the Farm Bureau is interesting that we in the Farm Bureau are the major players in opposition, but the large landowners are also all have lined up in opposition. So all the landowner groups are opposing this issue.
I just know there's a lot of people who really don't care about hunting one way or the other, but they really appreciate the fact that they can go out Sunday and not worry about it.
Yeah. It will be, we'll be sending out an alert, I'm sure, and it would just be important for people. One of the best things, one of the best things you could do is when we know where things are going, when we know what's coming up in the legislature, an alert from us, and just a note to your legislator, a phone call. That's going to be key to this, a key to this. And there's going to be a hearing on something, and the folks will have people there, so it'll be important to engage. Other thoughts, or I'm interested in anybody's position on this, and and anything in the opposite. I mean, sure, Doug.
Well, can you hear me? I think
Yes.
there's more to it than what we're talking about. I think that the people who surround these lands also have an interest in this, because I know that if I allowed Sunday hunting on my lands, I'd get a lot of blowback from all of the neighborhood.
Right.
They count on being able to, it's just not me that cares about Sunday, it's all the people around me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think you see it 78% against, because it's the people who don't even own land that are caring about the use of land.
Right. My personal land, I have 7 abutting owners. I can guarantee you that some of those abutting owners do not know where the boundary lines. I mean, many of my lines are stone walls, but there's many stone walls on my land, and if you don't know which stone wall it is, you don't know where your line is. I mean, it's confusing. And to tell somebody, yeah, here's your permission, go ahead. The likelihood is, even accidentally, that people are going to be on land where they're not allowed.
Tom, I don't want to have to remind you, but Maine Woodland Owners always recommends that landowners clearly mark their lines.
Yes. But if it's a stone wall, I don't want to paint all my trees and blaze all my trees on a stone wall, because my stone wall is a much better boundary line than me.
Yeah, just put up a sign that says it's this stone wall.
Yeah, this is the wall. Yeah.
Tom, I'm opposed to Sunday hunting because like some of the other people who've spoken, I have a lot of people that we've invited to walk on our land and use our land, and they tend to use it heavily on Sunday.
Yep.
I'm concerned that that's going to create a liability for me. I know we have a strong liability law, but I'm concerned. I've posted my land because of the behavior in the past of hunters.
Yep.
And as you know, there's been a number of incidents. So I think this just opens up one more exposure for landowners that we don't need.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, this is one of the I'm trying to come up. I was trying to come up with an activity that is done by one group that impacts another group more than hunting does. And you think about it, all the people that wear orange that aren't hunters, that you see them. I see them on Route 202. I'm driving in during hunting season, and I see people walking on Route 202 in Manchester, which is, highly trafficked. There's no woods. They're all wearing orange, and I'm thinking, you're not going to get shot on Route 202 for a deer. But people, walking down paved roads wearing orange, you don't see them wearing orange any other time of year. And so, you know, I've made the statement, I think more orange clothing is sold to non-hunters than hunters. Because they have it on their dog and every person in their family, not just the person, you know, a hunter may have it on only the person hunting. Everybody, you know, but you've got it on your entire family, your dog, your pets, your horses, everything. It's just going to change the whole dynamic here. So, but this is
think,
where
Bruce, did you
Yep.
have a question? I see John's hand as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that I'm from New York. I was surprised that they don't have hunting on Sunday. Really don't understand it. I was just surprised.
Sure. So Bruce, a couple of things. There's not, in many states, there's not leasing of land, you know, and I think in New York you have a lot of leases, don't you? Or lease land?
You do and you don't. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no leasing, well, essentially very little, you know, leasing of land. And the fact that you have one of the longest hunting, I mean, deer hunting season in Maine, most people don't know, starts in the middle of September with bow hunting. And it runs through bow hunting, you know, and then it goes into the firearm season, and then it goes to muzzleloader. So there's deer hunting from middle of September to middle of December. So it's a very long season, and the whole idea is you got 314 days a year to hunt without ever having to get permission. And that's a pretty powerful thing for a lot of folks. So that's been appreciated. And then the flip side is you don't hunt on Sunday, and everybody goes in the woods. So they've adjusted their schedule. That's the tradition that's grown up in Maine. You know, other states have done it differently, but and that's one of the reasons most property line, a lot of people don't clearly mark their property lines because it doesn't matter as much, you know. But if you're going to have hunting on Sunday, you're going to have people who are going to say, I better make it darn clear where my lines are. I know I've hunted in the South some, and it's very clear. It's a felony if I'm out there hunting on somebody else's land without permission. I can be guilty of a felony. In Maine, you're assumed you can go. It's just a strange situation.
Right. Okay. I know I had to have my property surveyed in the last year or two, and I had it painted, like you say, that red painted fence.
Yeah.
But I needed hunters to keep control of my deer population.
Yep. Yep.
And so,
Yep.
But I just also thought with a surprise with the no Sunday hunting, I figured, well, they were selling liquor on Sundays. I remember they started that.
Right.
I was surprised. All right, we know.
Well, it is, Bruce, it is an old blue law. It started as a blue law in 18,
Right.
I don't know when, you know, over 100 years ago. But so it started as a blue law. Absolutely. Right. And so did non-alcohol and
right.
Not selling car. You can't buy a car on Sunday either in Maine, you know.
Okay.
So, but that's because the dealers don't want to have to staff their dealership 7 days a week.
Right.
But the whole idea is over those years, the accommodation is, well, you don't have to have permission, but there's that one day landowners, you know that there's not going to be someone in the woods hunting.
Yes, I understand.
That's the accommodation. That's all. I mean, it just developed that way in Maine and some other states, frankly.
No, and I think it would be a nice, I can understand its purpose. I appreciate the answer.
That is the purpose, yeah. John, I think you had a question, or you had your hand up, right?
Yeah, just more of an observation. I'm out in Oregon, but the land that I'm a member because of is in Sweden, Maine, and has been in my family since before there was an America. So it's long, the stone walls, my border walls and all of that were mostly built by my great-great-great-grandfather. So to me, there's a lot of tradition and a lot of expectations based on tradition. For the first time ever, I had to post my land this year because I'm having some work done, a garage being built, and I really didn't want my good friend to get shot. So I posted my land for the first time ever. And it's been a very, very interesting procedure to see the range of reactions to suddenly having a piece of property posted.
Right.
From absolute flat out threats, from people who said that they've been hunting this land forever, and that doesn't hold up well with me because of how long that land has been our land. And normally I will ask them how much they're going to contribute to my taxes for this process. But also on the other side, those who have called my forester, because I use him because he's in the right time zone and all of that. And anybody who calls, he lets me know so that I can call and discuss the situation directly with the person. But it has been very, very interesting, the kind of shift, because I've been living out in the Pacific Northwest for about 25 years now, most of my time, with only partial time back in Maine. That will change in the next 5 years. I'll be back full-time in Maine. But there has been a real shift in the approach of hunters and land. And I don't, as you say, I think if Sunday hunting gets pushed, it will immediately go into, you cannot hunt on somebody's land without written permission, period. And I really don't think that's what the hunters want, or the organizations sponsoring this have not necessarily thought that out as thoroughly as they could.
Right. No, I absolutely. And your experience with posting land is very similar to what you hear a lot from people about. And then you get people, I don't know how many times I've run into people on my own land and who have said, well, I've been hunting here for years. Like, now I've got some, I mean, my land is open, but they'll tell me that like, well, I've got a right here. It's like, it's an assumed, it's not, they almost have assumed that there's some kind of right they own to be there because they've done it for many years. And they get offended by people that said, I don't want you there anymore. It's partly because, interesting in Maine, we have the lowest amount of public land and probably the greatest access to hunting and private land of any state in the country. And that's not an accident. So it's just kind of it's a little different. Tracy, I see you had a question or a comment or something.
Yeah, it was actually not on Sunday hunting, so if people still want to talk about that.
Okay.
Cool.
Any other? Okay.
Bill, I was just wondering if there was anything coming up on the whole discontinued abandoned road thing.
Yes, there is. I'll talk about that next.
Good.
How's that?
Great.
Yep. Any other comments on hunting? And is there someone on an advocate for it? It's perfectly fine to, we don't hold that against you in our organization. You don't have to think like everybody else in this organization. So please, please feel free. So, but if you really care about this issue, watch for an alert, because it will be, as I said, this is the first big fight we've seen on this in a very long time. And I don't know what the polls are going to show. I mean, I can tell you that even though many of the user groups are opposed, because if we have 14,000 miles of snowmobile, 6,000 miles of ATV trails in Maine, and 96 or 7% are on private property. And when you have a trail network, you don't need every landowner to block access. You only need a couple, and you can close significant trail systems if you're a landowner who says, you do that, and I'm gonna cut my land off from the trail, and now you got a dead end. So the people that are looking at the trail systems are saying, "Uh-oh, and that's something most other states don't have." We have a trail network like no other, and those trail networks are at risk by simply a few landowners saying, "I've had enough of this."
Tom, the thing that concerns me the most is the people in Maine will understand the trail systems and the benefits they have of being able to use 90% of our land is privately owned in the state of Maine. But I'm concerned that we've got national agendas that could disrupt that relationship. And that's my greatest concern.
Well, that's where it's all coming from. The push is all coming from these same groups have been working in other states and they actually, Pennsylvania was a state where there was no Sunday hunting. And now Pennsylvania, I think there's 2 or 3 Sundays now you can hunt in Pennsylvania. And I guess the first year they did it was kind of a Wild West show, but that was the most recent state to pass Sunday hunting. And
It
these-
almost seems to me like we ought to get Sam or somebody else to come out and have the hunters in Maine say, we don't want this.
Well, the main professional guides are testified in opposition. And
Okay.
the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine has been clear. They've always wanted, their membership is split. They'll tell you their membership is barely, little over 50% in favor of some kind of Sunday hunt. So then they would be, the ones that would be most likely, frankly. They're based on their internal polling. They have always, theoretically supported Sunday hunting, but they've not been pushing it because they know what the outcome will be. They know what the blowback is. They did not testify in favor of the permission requirement on Sunday hunting, that bill, and they had warned the national groups, this is not something we will support. And the national groups were shocked that the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine wouldn't join them in this written permission bill, and they were, and there was a lot of pressure applied to try to get the hunting community involved, and they would not, because they said, this, we know where this heads, and this is not good for hunting in Maine. So any serious attempt is going to try to thread the needle that doesn't require permission. I think, because anything that requires permission is going to have some serious opposition even from the hunting community that wants on Sunday.
Good.
We have about 10 minutes, Tom, so let's jump.
Okay,
into the
let me
next
jump
one.
to, I knew that would be a long topic. Let me talk quick about, Tracy mentioned discontinued abandoned roads. So I've been working on this issue for at least 10 years on the legislature and piecemeal, because this is a gosh awful mess. So the short version of the background is, when a town doesn't want a road anymore, they can get rid of it in 2 different ways. They can discontinue it and vote to say no more maintenance of it. The land reverts to the center line to the adjoining owners. And in most cases, a public easement is retained, meaning the public can use the road. The reason for a public easement is to prevent landlocking. That's the original purpose of maintaining a public easement. So it wasn't meant for everybody and their cousin to do whatever they want in the rights of way. It was the landowners further in on a road. If the ownership goes to the center line, and you're not the first one in line, then you theoretically are landlocked. So the public easement was a constitutional way to make sure that people could get to their property. The problem has become that and the municipalities hold the public easement. The problem is it's not clear in law what can be done, so that on what can be done on these roads. And while they're held by the municipality is basically washes their hands from this. So you have this odd situation of a landowner maintaining a road, a public easement, to get to their property, and then everybody else is using it. Who doesn't need to get to the property, just wants to drive on it or go someplace else or something like that. And we're seeing more and more uses, and we have major ATV trail issues now on some of these, where the town is granting permission you have to have permission in Maine to ride an ATV from a landowner. But the town's just claiming they have the right as public easement to grant that permission over the objection of the landowner, but they're not maintaining the trail. So they grant permission to ATVs, they ride on the trail, and the landowner maintains the trail. It's a weird situation. So there was a group that was the bill held over from the last session. I've been working on with this legislative subgroup on this issue. Something is going to happen on this issue. The legislators know it's not a fair situation. But the idea that you're going to turn all these thousands of miles of discontinued roads with public easements into a maintenance requirement for municipalities is not logical. That's not going to happen. So how do you address some of the real issues? The other example I'll give you is when you have a public road, obviously a landowner doesn't have any liability. When you give the land back to the landowner, to the center line of the road, and keep a public easement, the landowner now has personal liability on it and also environmental liability. So if someone creates an environmental problem, the landowner is held responsible for the environmental violation. So you had no responsibility for the town road, but once the town gets rid of it and keeps a public easement, all the liability now shifts to the landowner, because the municipality under the tort laws is protected from action against it. So the responsibility and liability shifts to a private owner and the maintenance. So that's what we're finding. So that's the issue. Tracy, did you have a particular question?
Just what's happening, and I'm not even sure I know what our position is, the organization's position.
My sense is, you don't get, there wasn't even a public process for getting rid of roads for a while. So we got that through, and it's clear. And it's interesting, we did get a law change last year that says any new public easement that is created on discontinued abandoned road, the only legal use is a motor vehicle or pedestrian traffic. So that would allow someone to drive on it or walk on it, but they won't be able to skid, use it as a skid trail, but they also won't be able to drive something that isn't a motor vehicle, like an ATV or even a snowmobile on it, without the permission of a landowner. But that doesn't apply to any public easement that had already been retained. And that's one of the issues we're trying to get at.
There's a question here from Bambi.
Hey, Tom, hi.
Hi.
Hi. So recently our town, I don't know if it was the town attorney or MMA, declared that the discontinuance that happened, I think back in 1870, we have a record of it, left no public easement.
Right.
Is it a date specific?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Before, I'm going to make sure I get my dates right. Before 1973 or 5, what date?
Or something like that.
There was no automatic public easement retained. So if you discontinued a road or abandoned is no maintenance for 20 years, there was no public easement retained unless explicitly it was retained. So if the order said the road is given up, but a public easement is retained, then there was one, but if it was silent, that meant no. But then after that date, it was flipped. So there was automatically one retained unless it was explicitly said no after that date. So back then, if you found the actual language, then there would be no public easement.
And so what are you advocating for?
I'm trying to do this piecemeal. I think we should clarify a public easement, what the use of a public easement is and what is not, what you can do with it. I mean, we don't want to landlock, you don't want to landlock everybody. Some of these issues get resolved by the landowners, but the fact that anybody can use them anytime is the problem, or for any use. So I think if we could clarify the public easements are for motor vehicle and pedestrian traffic, and then shield the landowners from any liability that occurs from that public use, environmental or personal liability, then I think you've made some headway.
The problem we have several of these roads in our holdings, and the problem we have is they're not really suitable for driving on, but there are some people who like to take their four-wheel drive trucks on them and get stuck and pull them out and all of that. So we have no problem with landowners getting access to their land.
Right.
We have some problem with essentially joyriding.
Right.
And and there's really no season where the thing's really passable by vehicle.
Right.
But it's almost every season it's passable by four-wheel drive trucks or ATVs.
Right. There is a law that if you damage a public easement, there is actually a specific crime for that. So if someone is on the public easement and damages the road, there is and you can show they did it. And there is, but that's the tricky part.
Yeah. this road's so damaged, you couldn't possibly show you damaged it anymore.
My problem is we have some members that the town has voted to open these to ATVs, and they're not suitable for an ATV. They're not even suitable, as you say, for a motor vehicle. And now they're ATV trails and marked as so, and boom, they go through. So that's a problem. Anything else on that? I don't want to run. I've got 3 minutes. I've got one other quick topic.
If people are willing to stay longer, we'll keep going. So if you need to drop off,
I think I can get it. The biggest, there are going to be bills that come up that we don't know are coming, and there are titles in now, but some of these titles are, an act to improve the environment. What the heck does that mean? It could have no impact on us, or it could be, those kind of things. So big. So we don't know. So there'll be some, but the other one, and there isn't a bill yet, and Tracy's been involved in knowing all. I'm sure there'll be legislation regarding carbon. I don't know exactly what it will be, but carbon sequestration and landowners, I know there will be some. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I am hearing there's a good bet that there'll be some additional resources in the Forest Service to help landowners that are interested in carbon, either carbon markets or carbon-friendly practices and things like that. So I'm pretty sure there'll be some additional technical assistance available. That's my guess. But beyond that, I don't know. There were some carbon-related bills held over as placekeepers last session, and I'm certain there will be additional bills on that. And there's no specific proposal that I am aware of. Doug.
So that's one of the reasons I'm actually here. I hope this is very helpful. I hope you plan to repeat this little episode in 6 or 8 weeks, but the issue of carbon is so new to most of us, and it's so important to many of us who have large landowners that we'd like to do something correct. You're an excellent place for a resource to those of us. We don't have professional foresters who even know much about this yet. So if I would encourage you to maybe even have a special session like this just on carbon sometime once you see what's happening.
Doug, I've got 3 thoughts for you. One is you're always welcome to contact me directly, and I'll be happy to help you on your individual situation. Secondly, at our annual meeting, which will be on Zoom, and in January 15th, Jen, or 16th?
12th.
12. There'll be a session on carbon. And thirdly, we have completed a carbon inventory on our lands, and we are in the process of working with all of the carbon programs to take our data and run them through their filters on carbon. And so we can inform landowners who might have somewhat similar situations. Here's what we did, here's what we found, here's what worked for us, here's what didn't, here's what we've learned from real life situations. So we hope to have that completed sometime in the next 6 months. So you will be reading more and more about this from us as it goes on.
That's great. And I hope you can be a resource to other people too, like municipalities who are trying to do the right thing with their own properties.
I don't want to tell people on this call. I guess I shouldn't tell people on this call because most of you, I assume, are members, but we don't refuse to help someone who's not a member. So I'm hoping that you don't all quit your membership because of that and say, I'll call anyway, but you won't get the newsletter unless you're a member. How's that? But I'll help anybody. We'll help anybody that needs help, to be honest with you. So, and that's what
A lot of times we'll get calls when people aren't members, but then they do become members because, it's the consistency. If you've been a member for a while, you've read a lot of this already. We try to keep this pretty up to date, these issues for people. So it just makes understanding all of this way easier to just be able to read about it, periodically.
I would say the carbon issue is real. I believe there are going to be genuine, real opportunities for landowners. Exactly what they'll be, I think that's still uncertain. But I do believe that there will be opportunities for landowners. that makes sense for the smaller owners. So, and we're looking at it from our own land's point of view, that we own land, but also from, obviously, from helping our members and anybody else. We have time for maybe one, if there's some burning question that somebody has. I don't want to drag everybody out. I mean, our time is up, but is there somebody who hasn't asked a question yet, or that really had something they wanted to bring up or say, or something that they haven't yet? And if there is, jump in. When you can always call me directly if you can always contact me directly.
I know tree growth has been an issue in the past. Is there something
Yes.
with tree growth?
Well, I don't know yet. Tree growth last session was tried to use, there was a bill in that tried to use tree growth as a lever to force certain other things that were completely unrelated. There's a longer story to it, but the governor made it clear that if tree growth was involved, the bill was going to get vetoed. So that whole thing came out of, tree growth was wiped out of that bill. But the issue that they're trying to resolve is not going to get resolved with the one they had. So you could see tree growth back. It would not surprise me to see a tree growth bill in this session, but I'm not aware of a specific one that's sitting there yet. But I wouldn't be shocked to see something around tree growth or added to something else. It's often used to leverage mostly large ownerships, frankly, because all the large landowners, so they're trying to leverage some behavior on large owners, and everybody else gets kind of caught in the net. So, but you will definitely know if there's an issue around tree, because we will be there on that one. I spend more time on that I get more questions about tree growth, and I spend more time with the legislature on that single issue than anything else I do. And as Jen mentioned, I'm going to be doing legislative stuff, but so Carla will be taking on a bunch of stuff too, where Carla has significant legislative experience. So we'll have some extra help this, here coming up.
I'm also going to I'm going to make sure that our legislative action webpage, now that things are back, we're going to be back in January, I'll keep that as up to date as possible. So things will have copies of the bills that we're focused on. Any testimony that Tom's given will be posted on there, and just anything relevant. We want to make that a good resource, a go-to location, so you can feel updated. And then if there is an action that we need our members to take, calling their legislators about an issue, we'll let you know for sure. We'll do an alert, and keep everybody posted.
One thing I'll say is we don't try to chicken our members with every single issue that comes up. So if you get a legislative alert from us, that hopefully is a sign this is really important, so that you don't get inundated with it. But if you get one, that means we don't think we can handle this on ourselves, or this is so important that we really need your help. That's been the way we've done it. If you've been a member a while, you don't get that many alerts, because a lot of times I know where this is going and there's no reason to get everybody wound up. But when you get an alert, that means we need help. So please keep that in mind.
And then the survey that committee is putting together, the task force is putting together around Sunday hunting, that's going to go out to our membership through email when it's together.
Yep. And we'll probably we can also post that up on our website. Here's the survey. Here are the survey.
Yeah. And then the results, I don't know what will happen with the results. We may or may not see them. We'll see, but
we'll see the results from the bigger poll. We will see, because they will be public.
Okay. And I also have a link to the website for the legislature and the Senate, and there's a really easy way. I'm sure everybody knows who their representative is, but just in case you want to double check, I'll have the link on that page as well, where you can just look up your town and find out who's your representative and your senator.
And if you don't know, you can just call me and I can tell you. So.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. Thanks you for this.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, I'll do it again. We'll do it again when the legislature gets going a little bit. How's that? So we can give you a little, in another month, we'll have, I said, they start the 5th or 6th, and, it's always slow to the start. But sometime near the end of January, there'll be probably a bunch of those things that we can update everybody on, so.
That'd be great, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you all for being members and supporters. I appreciate that. We couldn't do this without that. So thank you very
Our
much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.